Hello, I'm here talking to Dr. Christos Fritalis, who is the Executive Director of CIBAM from the Judge Business School. We're just about to start, Christos, a distinguished lecture series this afternoon looking at the BRICS and in particular China in that context. We're here outside of the college that you're a fellow of, Queen's College, which has an interesting history in terms of its origins back probably to Byzantine times.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. I understand that the fellows of this college actually experienced the fall of what was called then at the time Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire. So it is a long history here, and it's interesting to put this in the context of what we are exploring today, which is the rise of China and the BRIC. China herself being a very old civilization, but some of the other countries being more emerging countries in the context at least of their economic development.
So this afternoon we'll be addressing some of the issues and challenges of the BRICS, but clearly it's not the BRICS that are challenged themselves, it's the more developed economies in their relationship with how the BRICS are going to reshape the economic tectonic plates of the world.
Oh, you are absolutely right about this. I mean, it looks like on the one hand you have economic development taking place at the BRICS, and this is challenging the paradigms and the conceptions we have about corporate governance, public governance and supranational governance. But in some respects you are right to imply that it is in one sense the West game to lose. And this particularly relates to the debates there are at the moment about the Beijing versus the Washington consensus. The Chinese approach to economic development has provided an alternative paradigm to the Washington consensus, which in recent years was facing some challenges. And many developing nations are looking now at China as the way to develop themselves. Of course, this itself raises a number of problems, not least in terms of economic sustainability and in terms of actually the choice of the regimes that are being helped through this process.
I think it's also interesting that as we sit down to start our sessions this afternoon, President Obama in Washington will be starting another whole series of meetings with President Hu Jintao of China. The relationship between those two individuals is quite interesting and dynamic now. It's a very different relationship when President Nixon was the first US president to visit China in Beijing.
Again, you are spot on. I mean, this is a very interesting relationship. In the past only 3 months, I attended 2 major events organized by American institutions, one in Geneva, the other in Denver only last week, and both of them were in Stanford actually, and both of them were focusing on the rise of China. The US seems to be very concerned. They can see the prospects for economic development and for good, but they also see the challenges, both in respect with the developmental models, but also in respect to the eventual long-term issue of sustainability. And sustainability has to do with social sustainability, economic, and importantly environmental sustainability. All of these things need to be managed. At the moment this management is taking place at a bilateral level. It's likely sooner or later to need global, a more international level of negotiations to address some of these challenges.
So do you think that framework is going to reshape the way in which the next round of the WTO negotiations will be framed?
Well, it is arguably the case that the WTO has been putting some constraints to the development of developing countries, partly by relying on some variants of the Washington consensus ideas. But it's also true, I believe, that the developing countries have made use of it, has started learning and has started playing the game in a better way. And the emerging power of China is actually maybe helping to shape again different rules of the game to facilitate more economic development of emerging economies. Again, the challenges need to be put in place, and that's part of the challenge is that at least the Washington consensus was relying very strongly on conditionality. The Chinese approach does not require so much conditionality, and this may be raising some question marks about the issue of democracy. This is to be seen.
Now, CIBAM, the Centre for International Business Management at the Judge Business School, has played a pivotal role in being at the forefront of some of the issues that are going to address or have addressed businesses going forward. What role do you see CIBAM playing for businesses in the future?
I think we are quite satisfied with what we are doing, in the sense that we are very privileged to have a global advisory board that is really ahead of the game in terms of thinking of what is going to be the big themes. And our ability to provide a forum for discussing these themes before they become big. And there are some examples here relating to the financial crisis, to the issue of aging and pensions, to the issue of what is going to happen to Russia many years ago. On all of these things we were ahead of the game, and many of the board members have commented how much they benefited out of this, stepping a bit aside and thinking of the big picture and how this impact on their businesses. And my hope is that today's event also will provide opportunity to these business people to actually think of the big picture, and it is a huge picture there.
Well, one of the things that we'll be talking about is the launch of the top 50 most valuable Chinese brands. It's the first time that a study's been undertaken looking at the value of Chinese brands, and it's probably a testament to the tipping point that we find ourselves in the relationship between China's growing domestic economy versus what really has turbocharged China's growth in the past, the export economy. And we'll be seeing a number of major Chinese brands with huge brand valuations that most of us probably in the room this afternoon would never have heard of. The relationship now that we see in the next stage of China's development of stimulating a much more domestic growth in a domestic economy versus just looking at the export economy. What opportunities do you think that that's going to present itself for both Chinese brands to become more powerful and grow faster, and for Western brands trying to export their products and knowledge to the Chinese marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very fascinating issue. You are aware that China has been rather slow in developing its own brands. That was for a complex set of reasons, not least including the fact that they were for a long period of time satisfied in serving Western brands. This is changing, and actually the economic crisis has provided a huge opportunity to adopt a radically new model of developing brands by actually gradually acquiring them and then using the capabilities that are derived from this in order to be leveraged back home and develop brands. The focus, the emerging focus of China on the domestic economy is likely to provide a useful counterbalance to the exclusive almost reliance on the American economy now for economic growth. So this is something that we are looking forward to. Then again, as I said, there are challenges that we have to put the whole picture in place.
Well, this afternoon we'll be exploring some of those challenges. Christos, thank you very much indeed for talking to us from an exceptionally cold Cambridge University on a late January afternoon. Let's go from the cold of the outside to the warmth and intellect of inside the Judge Business School.
Thank you so much, David. It was a privilege. But before we go back into the hotter places, let me just emphasize how privileged we are to be celebrating with this event also 15 years of continuing collaboration with WPP, whose CEO is also the chair of the Global Advisory Board of CIBAM, and we look forward to the continuing successful collaboration.
Well, so do we. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Christos.